"Open your birthday gift," my father said. The envelope sat beside my untouched dessert, thick enough to hold more than a birthday card. "My model with 2 fingers while my younger brother Brand, make sure you get her reaction," Mom told him. I unfolded the notarized pages. Family Disownment Declaration, my name appeared beneath the heading. So did their signatures. Dad lifted his glass and announced loudly enough for nearby diners to hear. From the whole family, Brandon zoomed in, waiting for me to cry. Mom leaned back with a satisfied smile. "This is what happens when you marry a stranger and act like." I looked at the 3 of them, folded the letter neatly, and placed it back inside the envelope. "Thank you," I said. Their smiles disappeared. I reached for the bill, paid for my meal, and stood. Mom's voice sharpened. "That's all you have to say, for now." I walked away while Brandon kept filming. Behind me, Dad called out, "Blood means nothing without respect." I almost turned around. For years, I had paid their emergency bills, rearranged work meetings for family obligations, and SWI achievements were always expected. His failures, yet on my 32nd birthday, they had invited me to an expensive restaurant not to celebrate me. The diners nearest our table had gone silent. One woman lowered her fork. A waiter stood frozen busy outside. The cool night air hit my face as the restaurant door closed behind me. My phone rang before I reached my car. My husband's name appeared on the screen. I answered. "Did they finally do it?" he asked quietly. I stared at the envelope in my hand. He had warned me that Patricia's sudden invitation felt staged. "Ted Peace," I said. "All 3 of them signed it." Was a pause, not surprise, confirmation. "Are you safe?" "Fine." "Then come home," he said. "Tomorrow changes everything." I glanced back through the restaurant window. Brandon was showing my parents the recording. "And Patter, what happens tomorrow?" my husband added. "They brought entirely on themselves." Next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. The disownment letter lay beside it, not crumpled, not torn, just neatly folded exactly as I had left it the night before. My husband walked into the kitchen, glanced at the envelope, and quietly sat across from me. "You didn't sleep." "No, you're thinking about them." I managed a tired smile. "I keep wondering why I expected yesterday to be different." Reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Because they're your family." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence that comes after finally admitting something you've spent years trying to deny. Looking back, yesterday hadn't begun at that restaurant. It had started years earlier. Growing up, my mother had one rule that somehow only applied to me: keep the peace. If Brandon forgot birthdays, Mom laughed. "That's just Brandon." If Brandon borrowed money and never paid it back, Dad shrugged. "He'll figure it out." If I received a promotion, my mother would smile politely before asking whether Brandon needed help. Every success I had somehow became another opportunity to rescue him. When I became a senior compliance attorney, Dad's first response wasn't congratulations. "So your salary went up." When I nodded, he smiled. "Good. Your brother could use a little help." I rarely said no, not because Brandon deserved it, because I believed saying yes would finally make me enough. It never did. Even after I met my husband, nothing changed. My parents didn't ask whether he was kind. They didn't ask whether he made me happy. They wanted resumes, assets, connections, his entire family history. When he politely explained that parts of his work were confidential because of ongoing corporate negging something. "A respectable man has nothing to conceal," she declared. "He isn't hiding from you," I replied. "He's honoring legal agreements." She laughed. "Or maybe he's unemployed." Dad joined in. If he really respected this family, he'd sit down and answer every question we ask. He had offered more than once. Each invitation came with one condition: meet him first, judge him afterward. Instead, my parents demanded every private detail before they would even shake his hand. When I refused to violate confidential agreements, they accused me of choosing my husband over my father. The irony never escaped me. They had already forced me to choose. Around noon, my phone began vibrating nonstop. Messages, notifications, missed calls. One text from a former college friend read, "Alina, is this really what happened?" A link followed. I opened it. Brandon had uploaded the birthday dinner. The video started exactly where my mother slid the envelope toward me. None of the conversation beforehand appeared. None of Patricia insisting everyone stay seated. None of Brandon announcing he wanted good lighting. None of the rehearsed smiles before I arrived. Instead, viewers saw what looked like an ungrateful daughter silently accepting disownment before the caption read, "Sometimes toxic family members remove themselves. Best birthday ever." Within hours, thousands had watched it. Comments poured in. She looks so cold. I bet she married rich. Parents don't do this for no reason, but mixed among them were different voices. Why was someone already filming? Why is the paperwork notarized? This feels planned. I kept scrolling. Each comment felt like strangers arguing over a life they knew nothing about. I set my phone down. I should respond, I whispered. My husband gently shook his head. No, they're destroying my reputation. They're trying to. He picked up the phone and replayed the video only once, then he paused it. There. He enlarged the frame. Brandon's camera angle, the notarized pages already outside the envelope, my mother's expression before anyone spoke, the waiter standing awkwardly beside the table as though he'd been delayed from bringing dessert. He continued watching until the video ended. Finally, he placed the phone face down. This wasn't an argument. It wasn't even spontaneous. I looked at him. It was planned from the beginning. He nodded slowly. They invited you to celebrate your birthday. A brief pause. But they came to perform your humiliation. The first time since leaving the restaurant, I saw something change in his expression. Not anger, resolve. He stood, picked up his jacket, and reached for his car keys. Where are you going? I asked. He looked back with complete calm. Stayed invisible because that's what we agreed. He opened the front door. They've made that impossible now. He stepped outside. As the door closed behind him, one question echoed through my mind. Why were complete strangers about to start asking my father about the daughter he had so proudly? This Monday morning began like every other workday for my father. He arrived 20 minutes early, coffee in one hand and a leather portfolio in the other, convinced his career. For months. Rumors had circulated through the company. A major investment group was negotiating a controlling acquisition. Nobody knew exactly who would lead the transition. Nobody knew who the new CEO would be. But everyone agreed on one thing. The executives already inside the company would either rise or disappear. Dad had spent weeks telling everyone he expected to be promoted once the deal closed. This acquisition couldn't come at a better time, he told a department manager as they walked toward. They'll need experienced leadership. Manager smiled politely. We'll find out soon enough. Never noticed the uncertainty in his voice. Brandon arrived an hour later, carrying the same confidence. He stopped by several coworkers' desks before logging into his computer. You guys have to see this, he said, pulling out his phone. Within seconds, the birthday video was playing again. That's my sister. A few employees looked uncomfortable, others laughed awkwardly. So she really married some mystery guy? One coworker asked. Brandon grinned. Nobody's ever met him. Another coworker frowned. Seems strange your mom had legal paperwork ready. Brandon shrugged. When someone embarrasses the family long enough, eventually you've had enough. Conversation ended when everyone's computers chimed simultaneously. A company-wide email had arrived. Mandatory executive assembly. Attendance required. Tomorrow. 9:00 a.m. New leadership introduction. The office buzzed immediately. The acquisition's official. They're finally announcing it. I wonder who the CEO is. Brandon slipped his phone back into his pocket. Whoever it is, he joked, they're inheriting a mess. That evening, my parents celebrated. Mom insisted on hosting dinner at their house. She poured herself a glass of wine before raising it toward Dad and Brandon. 2 fresh starts. Dad smiled. And finally having peace. Mom laughed. Family can finally move forward without someone constantly keeping secrets. Once did either of them wonder whether they had gone too far. Not once did anyone mention calling me. As far as they were concerned, the chapter had ended across town. My husband and I quietly packed for the next morning. His suit hung pressed beside the bedroom door. Mine lay neatly across the bed. He adjusted his tie while looking into the mirror. Last chance, he said softly. If you want me to postpone anything, I still can. I shook my head. No, I don't want them punished. I know, just don't want them protected anymore. He turned toward me. You understand what tomorrow will feel like for them? I do. You're cert. I thought about the restaurant, the notarized letter, Brandon's camera, my mother's smile, my father's announcement to an entire dining room, then I nodded. They made their decision. He walked over and kissed my forehead. Then tomorrow, we simply tell the truth. The following morning, security around my father's office building looked different. Additional guards stood near the entrance. Luxury vehicles lined the curb. Senior executives who usually joked in the lobby now spoke in hushed voices. Department heads were escorted upstairs together. Even Dad admitted the atmosphere felt unusually formal. Inside the executive conference room, Conversations stopped whenever another board member entered. Everyone kept glancing toward the closed doors. "They're late," someone whispered, waiting for the new leadership team. Dad straightened his jacket. This was the meeting he believed would change his career. The doors finally opened. Several unfamiliar executives entered first, then legal counsel, then members of the investment group. My father scanned every face, searching for the new CEO instead. He saw me. I walked calmly beside the executive team wearing a tailored navy suit. No visitor badge, no hesitation, no uncertainty. The whispering around the room grew louder. "Isn't that Richard's daughter? What is she doing here?" Dad slowly rose from his chair. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. I met his eyes but said nothing. Before he could speak, the final person entered the room. He walked directly toward me. Without saying a word, he reached for my hand. I smiled. He intertwined his fingers with mine before turning to face the stunned room. Every conversation stopped, every eye fixed on us. My father looked as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. The silence inside the conference room stretched so long that I could hear the air conditioning hum. My father stared at our joined hands. Brandon looked from me to my husband and back again, as if repeating the motion would somehow change. My mother wasn't there, but I already knew someone would be calling her within minutes. One of the board members smiled politely. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "thank you for your patience." He gestured toward the man beside me. "It is my pleasure to introduce the new chief executive officer and majority owner of Halcyon Invest." He announced my husband's name. And his wife, Alina Bennett. No dramatic music, no triumphant speech, just one simple sentence. Yet it changed the room completely. Several employees exchanged stunned looks. One manager quietly whispered, "His wife." Another nodded toward me. "Seen her before." A third answered almost immediately. "The birthday video." Within seconds, recognition spread around the conference room. My husband acknowledged everyone with a calm nod before beginning the presentation. "Thank you for being here." His voice remained measured and professional. "Our purpose today is straightforward. We will discuss the transition plan, operational priorities." He clicked to the first slide. No mention of my family, no mention of the restaurant, no mention of the video. For nearly 20 minutes, he discussed financial projections, integration timelines, and organizati. The meeting felt almost ordinary. That was what unsettled my father the most. He had expected anger. Instead, he was receiving professionalism. When the presentation reached corporate governance, my husband paused. Organization maintains strict expectations regarding leadership conduct. Another slide appeared. Integrity, respect, professional judgment, public behavior. He continued calmly. Leadership extends beyond technical performance. Decisions made outside the office can affect employment. Several department heads nodded. No one looked at my father yet. Then the vice president of human resources stood. "As part of every acquisition," she explained, "our team conducts independent leadership reviews." If she opened a folder. These reviews include management history, internal complaints, documented conduct concerns, and punishment. My father's expression tightened. He finally understood this meeting wasn't ending with a promotion. The HR executive continued. During routine review, several publicly circulated videos involving company leadership came to our. She pressed a button. The paused image from Brandon's viral recording appeared on the conference room screen. The exact frame showing him filming me while my parents presented the disownment letter. A murmur swept through the room. Brandon's face turned pale. That wasn't. No one interrupted the HR executive. "Concern is not a private family disagreement." She looked around the room. "Concern is the deliberate public humiliation, the recording and publication of that event, and this organization." Another executive added quietly, "Leadership is measured when nobody is watching." The irony hung heavily over the room in this case. Everybody had been watching. My father finally stood. "I'd appreciate the opportunity to explain." My husband folded his hands. "Have every opportunity to participate in the review process." Richard looked directly at me. "Alina." It was the first time he had spoken my name without anger since before my birthday. "I think we should discuss this privately." Before I could answer, my husband spoke. "Business decisions follow policy." Sentence landed softly, firmly, without hostility. My father looked back at me, desperation replacing confidence. I held his gaze. "And family decisions," I said quietly, "followed yours." No one in the room spoke. There was nothing left to argue. The words simply settled over everyone present. My phone vibrated repeatedly inside my purse. I didn't need to look to know who it was, my mother, again, and again, and again. By the time the meeting paused for a short recess, she had left multiple voicemails. Then text messages, please answer. We need to talk. There has to be some misunderstanding. For years, I had answered every call within minutes. No matter how busy I was, no matter how hurt I felt. This time, I slid my phone back into my purse without opening a single message. For the first time in my life, they couldn't reach the daughter they had always assumed would event the meeting resumed. Before anyone could continue the discussion, another group entered the conference room, members of the compliance committee. Each carried a thick folder. The chairperson placed the files neatly on the conference table. We've completed the preliminary leadership review, she announced. My father's shoulders slowly sank. He realized this was no longer about a birthday dinner, no longer about a family argument. The consequences had already begun, and they were now being handled by people who cared only about facts, evidence, and policy, not excuses. The preliminary review became a formal review over the next several weeks. Despite what many employees assumed, my husband never participated in evaluating my father or broth. He recused himself immediately. Have a personal relationship with individuals involved, he told the board. Every employment deck the directors unanimously agreed. An outside governance firm completed the investigation alongside human resources. Everything was documented. Everything was reviewed. Everything followed policy. It mattered to my husband that no one could ever claim personal revenge had influenced the outcome. And it mattered just as much to me the investigators uncovered far more than anyone expected. The birthday video wasn't the reason my father lost his position. It was simply one piece of a much larger pattern. Years of leadership reviews revealed repeated favoritism in promotions. Several employees described being pressured to overlook ethical concerns. Others reported that Richard frequently dismissed compliance procedures whenever they inconvenienced records that had been ignored under the previous administration were finally examined. One executive summarized it plainly during the final board meeting. Public video didn't create these concerns. It revealed the judgment behind them. Within days, my father was informed that his employment was being terminated, not because he disowned his daughter. Because he had failed the standards expected of a company, leader Brandon's situation unfolded differently. The investigation found that he had used company equipment during work hours to edit, upload, and PR his public comments, identified himself as an employee while mocking a private family member. He had also circulated the video among coworkers inside the office. Those actions violated multiple company policies. When Human Resources finished reviewing everything, Brandon received formal disciplinary action and E-ing. The punishment embarrassed him far more than it harmed him financially. Coworkers who had laughed with him now avoided discussing the incident altogether. Some quietly apologized to me after learning the full story. Others admitted they had only seen the edited recording. None of them had known what really happened before Brandon pressed record. My mother faced consequences no investigation could measure. Within our extended family, the truth spread quickly. An aunt who had attended the dinner admitted she had always felt uncomfortable about how carefully EA cousin revealed that Brandon had proudly told relatives beforehand that he was going to teach. People began asking questions my mother couldn't answer. Why was the document already notarized? Why was Brandon filming before Alina opened the envelope? Why was her birthday chosen for such a public rejection? The story Patricia had carefully constructed began collapsing under its own weight. Then another video appeared. A customer seated across the restaurant had quietly recorded part of the dinner after noticing unlike Brandon's edited version. This recording showed the moments leading up to the envelope. It captured my mother sliding the document across the table. It captured my father telling Brandon to keep recording. It captured me saying almost nothing before quietly paying my portion of the bill and leaving. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Public opinion shifted almost overnight. The comments beneath Brandon's original upload changed dramatically. So this was staged. She didn't even argue. They humiliated their own daughter on her birthday. Within days, Brandon deleted the video. It didn't matter. Thousands had already seen both versions. The internet never forgets. My phone continued ringing for weeks. My mother's name filled my screen almost every day. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she insisted the family deserved another chance. Letters began arriving at our house, then flowers, then handwritten birthday cards months after my birthday had already passed. One afternoon, my husband found me quietly reading one of her letters. He sat beside me. "Do you believe she's sorry?" I folded the paper carefully. "I think she's sorry about the consequences. About losing you." I looked out the window for several seconds before answering. "Honestly, don't know." He nodded. "You don't owe anyone an answer until you know." That became the easiest decision I'd ever made. I didn't respond, not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because reconciliation without accountability would only invite the same cycle back into my life. Some doors close for a reason. Several months later, my husband and I sat together at a small table in our backyard. No expensive restaurant, no elaborate decorations, just a homemade cake, close friends, quiet laughter, and people who wanted to celebrate me rather. Someone asked whether I regretted losing my family. I thought about the question for a long moment. Then I walked inside and returned with a small keepsake box. Inside was the disownment letter, still neatly folded. Exactly as it had been the night my parents handed it to me. One friend frowned. "You kept it?" I smiled. "Because it still hurts." I ran my fingers lightly across the envelope. "Keep it because it reminds me of the day I stopped begging people to love me." Everyone fell silent. For years, I had mistaken endurance for loyalty. I believed peace meant accepting whatever people did to me. I thought sacrificing my own dignity would eventually earn acceptance. Instead, the greatest gift my family ever gave me was showing me exactly where I truly stood. Once I accepted that truth, I stopped chasing approval that was never mine to earn. I found peace instead. As the evening sun settled across our backyard, my husband reached for my hand. This time, there were no cameras, no speeches, no audience waiting for my humiliation, only people who chose to be there because they cared. I looked around the table and realized something I never could have understood on my 32nd be the day my family erased my name from their lives wasn't the day I lost everything. It was the day I finally stopped losing myself.